It was dark for a moment when I submerged myself in the cool water of the brushy creek lake. But I regretted my decision, as there was a sinking feeling in my stomach that if I kept my eyes closed for a second longer it would come for me, and I still can't tell if that would be a blessing or a curse. Part of me has always longed for it to come back for me again, so I could finally understand what happened all those years ago, but the other part of me is scared of the unknown, of what would come when or if the creature does come back to me. So as quickly as I could I swam back to the surface on the verge of panic, because every second longer I spent under the water was a second I could be swallowed up by something I might never understand. When I finally got to the surface I felt a sudden burst of cold winter air, and water droplets falling from my face as I emerged from the lake. It's been years since the indecent, and even though every second longer I spend in the murky water reminds me of what happened, I'll make myself stay here, partially to prove to myself I'm not afraid and partially to prove that same thing to my father. Besides, it has to only in my head. Dad's right, I'm being crazy, irrational, it was just a figment of my imagination. I can still remember so vividly the minute after it happened I ran to my father and told him everything, but him being a man who grew up in the 50s, and me being a 10-year-old, of course he didn't believe me. I've tried so hard to forget it, or at least not let it consume my every thought. Every day it gets worse though. The pull I feel towards this stupid body of water only gets so much stronger. It's almost like I can feel the hands of a stranger pulling me towards it, but it can't be true. If I accepted that one night that tall dark figure crept up and surrounded me with a strong unsettling presence, like it knew I was young and didn't know any better not to follow it, and I didn't know any better, so I followed with only a slight hesitance as it led me to the lake, pulling me swiftly to see a large patch of land right in the middle of the water I had never seen before in all my years going to the lake. Some would have called an island. Even just looking at it I felt like it was speaking to me, as if it had a spirit that made me feel like I was in heaven and hell all at the same time was real. I don't know what would happen. I might just go crazy. But just as I was about to get into my daily fight with myself figuring out what the hell I should do, I felt it. The figure was there, again for the first time in 6 years. It was there grabbing me and pulling me towards the water just as it did before, but this time I'm older, stronger, so I did my best to fight it, not knowing what would happen if I let it lead me with no trouble. After a while of struggling the figure had and stopped once to even look at me. It was like it was in a trance, and its only purpose at this moment was to lead me to that godforsaken island. And as I expected, I saw that patch of land right in the middle of everything, like it knew you couldn't look away. The only thing different this time was a bridge that connected the land to where the figure had led me. The bridge was long and wide, it had a stone bottom and wooden rails. It felt a bit empty with me being the only one waiting at the end to cross. As I studied the bridge, the creature stood there for a minute or two as if it was waiting for me, trying to figure me out and seeing if I'd dare step onto the wide stone path. I tried to ask it what it was doing, why it had brought me here again, what would happen if I followed it, and so many more of the questions that have burned in the back of my brain for years, but all I got was a blank stare in return. That stupid figure that has haunted me for 6 years just stood there like I didn't know where it was. Then suddenly out of nowhere it floated up and flew into the air, and out of my sight within a second, leaving me shocked, staring at the starry night sky, deciding if I should go follow that path that could lead me to my greatest fear or wildest dreams. It would probably be a place I could never come back from. I decided to ignore my gut telling me to do anything except go onto that path, and I stepped onto it feeling instantly as if the world was about to fall from under me, but everything stayed right where it was. I stomped on that store a couple times to test it out and see if I could fall to my doom if I took another step, but nothing happened. The bridge stayed in place, the trees were still swaying in the wind, and the water was still as silent and mysterious. I de-iced, there was no point in stalling any longer, and took another step forward. No matter the dangers that could come with the strange island, I needed to know what it was, where it came from, and why it was calling me. And so I went, leaving everything I know and love behind, possibly forever, just to discover the unknown.